There we go. Good afternoon. The Memphis Landmarks Commission is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of December 19th, 2024. My name is Cindy Tucker, and I'm the chair of this commission. Mr. Brett Ragsdale serves as the executive secretary. Mr. Ragsdale, may I get a roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Gill?
Here.
Ms. Love?
Here.
Ms. Rainwater?
Here.
Vice Chair Doss?
Here.
Chair Tucker?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Memphis Landmarks Commission and the local historic district provisions are established to ensure preservation of structures that are of historic value to Memphis. Our function is to preserve significant resources, enhance community pride, and foster civic beauty and ensure compatibility within designated historic districts. The Commission is authorized to review projects and determine their appropriateness based on the design review guidelines. At this time, I would like to swear the staff in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. May I get a, I've done that. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report if there is one this month, and then explain the procedure for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not have a secretary's report, so I'll go into the procedure of the meeting. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda are found in the right podium. For each case, staff at the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, the Commission will hear first from those speakers in support of the application, then from those speakers in opposition to the application, and the speakers will have 3 minutes each. And then finally, the applicant will have 3 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the Commission. The chair may provide additional time provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the Commission will be sworn in by the chair. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out speaker's cards for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD planner at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from those applicants since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the Commission will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. All motions by this Commission will be made in the affirmative. The bylaws governing the Commission require the affirmative vote of a majority of the attending members to approve an application. The Commission may also vote to hold an application for a period of 1 month. Madam Chair, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled.
Thank you. At this point, the Commission will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience or the Commission objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the Secretary reads the case. Once the consent is established, the Commission will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole and will hold no individual public hearings on each case. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda are eligible?
Item number 1, COA 2024-137 at 974 Roselle Street in the Roselle-Ansdale Historic District. Item number 3, COA 2024-140, 2097 Elsie Avenue in the Cooper Young Historic District. Item number 4, COA 2024-141, 1029 University Street in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District. Item number 5, COA 2024-142, 2117 Howellwood Drive in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District. Item number 6, COA 2024-144, 1584 Foster Avenue in the Glenview Historic District. Item number 7, COA 2024-145, 932 Emmy Street in the Roselle-Ansdale Historic District. And item number 8, COA 2024-146, 1491 Union Avenue in the Central Gardens Historic District.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as established by the Secretary?
So moved.
Thank you. I would like to remind the Commissioners that by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
You didn't get a second.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Love? We didn't
I'll second
Yes.
it. And yes.
Yes. Ms. Love? Ms. Rainwater?
Yes.
Vice Chair Doss?
Yes, I have a question though. I wanted to just kind of I have a question about the Foster property.
Okay, do we want to pull that from consent then, I guess?
I don't think we have to pull it from consent, but I just had the question. I left a note for you all about that. Can we? Okay, we can pull it. Yes,
Did you want to pull it from consent and discuss?
yes, I just have a quick question about that.
Okay, we'll pull that from consent then. So that is item number 6, so that will be pulled from consent. Yes. Okay. All right. Vice Chair Doss and Chair Tucker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. If you're here for any of the cases just listed on the consent agenda, you have been approved. You don't need to remain for the rest of the meeting, but are welcome to stay for the remainder of the cases. At this point, I would like to state that the minor COA applications as listed on the agenda have been reviewed and approved by the Commission. The Commission will now continue with the regular hearing of the major COA applications as listed on the agenda. Mr. Secretary, please call the first case for the regular agenda.
Item number 2, COA 2024-139, 1490 Linden Avenue in the Central Gardens Historic District.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Could you come to the podium?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you state your name and address for the record?
My name is David Cook, 1490 Linden Avenue.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Have you had a chance to read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with the staff report and its conditions?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. And so we'll talk to you in a second, and we're going to show our staff report for us.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Aisha Penzis with the Division of Planning and Development. Item before you is COA 2024-139, located at 1490 Linden Avenue in Central Gardens Historic District. The subject property is a 2-story colonial revival style home with stucco exterior built in early 1930s. The applicant is requesting approval to extend a 6-foot tall side yard wall of parched concrete about 5.5 feet beyond the allowed side yard fence location based on the design guidelines. Here is the subject property, a view from Linden Avenue, and the subject side yard wall is located right over here. And here is a close-up view of the previous wooden fence that was removed and a new stucco wall was built on this side of the property. The applicant actually received a minor COA approval back in July of this year for an 8-foot tall parched concrete side yard wall with a 6-foot tall extension that extends beyond the driveway gate that you can see here in this previous site plan. And current application is requesting an addition to this portion of the wall to extend another 5.5 feet towards the front, basically being in line with the corner of the property, the existing structure. You can see the proposed site plan here. The applicant already has a minor approval for the 8 feet tall wall, plus the 6 feet tall wall extending beyond the driveway gate, and they're requesting basically the red portion right here to be in line with the front wall of the house. While the Central Gardens design guidelines clearly state that any kind of side yard wall that is not transparent in quality needs to be set back at least a quarter of the depth of the subject house. So the application is clearly not following the design guidelines. It's not adhering to the design guidelines requirement. Therefore, we are recommending rejection of this application. Here's a view that the applicant actually provided. You can see here is the blue dotted lines are the previous 8 feet tall fence that was removed. And you can see this gray area is the already approved 6 foot tall concrete wall with the minor application. And their current request is to extend this wall about 5.5 feet towards the front. As I mentioned, the applicant is requesting that a side yard wall that extends beyond the quarter depth of the structure, so it's not adhering to the design guidelines. Again, staff recommends rejection of this application, but if approved, staff recommends the following conditions. The previously approved 6 foot tall behind the driveway gate shall remain as approved previously by the minor COA, but the 6 foot tall wall beyond the driveway gate shall not be constructed. The applicant shall have two options: A, to install a wooden 5 foot tall trellis with transparent qualities, or a 5 foot tall wrought iron fence with transparent qualities beyond the driveway gate, not to extend beyond the front wall of the structure, or B, to build a maximum 2 foot tall knee wall or planter of parched concrete with evergreen landscaping or shrubs, not to extend beyond the front wall of the structure. And any change or deviation from the approved COA shall be submitted to the Landmarks Commission for review and approval. This concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? All good?
Just for clarity, the 6 foot extension just hasn't been built yet at this time.
Yes, I believe it's not built yet, but the 8 foot tall portion of it behind the driveway gate is built.
Okay.
It's there.
That's correct.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Now you have 5 minutes to address any issues that you have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I purchased this house in 1980. The builder and the only previous owner was Mayor Edmund Orgel, the first post-Crump era mayor. The wooden fence that was torn down because a huge oak tree died was built in the 1980s and was there ever since. And when we had to remove it, we planned to use this wall to replace it, which is what we intended to do. As you've seen from the photographs, there's a privacy issue between the two front doors, front porches. And our neighbor, Mr. Doug Walker, is here, and he agrees and consents with what we propose. He agreed with the 8 foot wall. But if we need to settle on another 6 feet of 6 feet, we can live with it. And essentially, and my wife is here to support what we're doing. And essentially, that's all I have to say. I've been a trial lawyer for 45 years, and I've learned to be brief. So if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them, and then I will defer to Mr. Archer, the construction manager.
Okay, thank you. Y'all have questions for the applicant?
I do have one question of who handled the previous?
I'm sorry.
Who handled the previous COA request that was approved?
Mr. Archer.
And this is our same girl, staff member, I think, that helped us with the first one. Is that true?
No, it was actually Margot who issued the minor
Sorry.
COA.
Denise knows things. Margot did the first one, and it was approved 8 and then 6 by 6.
Can we make sure we get everything on the microphone, so if we have questions, that we,
Almost. Okay.
and we need to get everyone sworn in. So.
Denise, my assistant, may be here to answer technical questions like
Okay, hold on.
who
Wait,
approved
sir,
what.
I need to get your name and swear you in.
Tom Archer Custom Builders.
Wait a second. Okay. And what's your address?
My address is 431 South Main Street, Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Denise is telling me that one of the other staff members handled the first one, which allowed us to replace the 8-foot wood fence up to the drive gate with an 8-foot stucco fence that exactly matches the house in texture and color. And we did so. And then the, I guess, minor approval also approved that 6 foot from the drive gate, 6 foot forward and 6 foot tall to midway of the neighbor's front porch. So we constructed it to the wall, to the drive gate, and then looking at it, then we started discussing with the cooks, well, this thing looks like it's half finished, it's half done. It doesn't, and of course we put columns at the starting and stopping points. So if we look at the picture of it visually, you look like it's a fence half done. And our neighbor, Mr. Doug Walker, agrees with that and it adjoins his yard. So what we're asking for is to maintain the 6 foot stucco, which was an upgrade from wood, to match the house exactly, and then move forward just the 5'6" more, so that it ends up center of the neighbor's column, and that looks architecturally correct to all of us, and it gives the two neighbors 5'6" property, and it obstructs the view into their living rooms. So it seems laying it out, which we have with plywood for them, is not offensive at all. I don't think anyone will know the difference. Because it's still set way back off the street, and it doesn't extend past the neighbor's house or past their house. It's visually it looks so much better. So they really would like to do it, and we'd like to help them do it. So y'all have to talk about it. But I think a visual of that you showed of the looking from David and Teresa's yard toward the neighbors, you'll see how it looks half finished. And I can answer any other questions.
Okay. Do y'all have questions for Mr. Archer?
When you say half finished, is it just because of how you're capping off the end? Because honestly, if it's a column or some kind of receiving pier that's happening at the end, whether or not it's behind or if it's before, it would still look either the half finish that you're talking about or the finish that you're talking about. What you're talking about is just the fact that you want to block the visual. It's not about it being half finished.
Well, I would say that that's our opinion. It doesn't mean it's correct. And of course, they lived with it since he bought the house in the 80s, and it's been a divider between the two living rooms and driveways, and it actually connects his existing fence, that section also, to his backyard, ties into it. So it's probably what they're used to, but the visual helps me a lot. And by looking at it, it looks like it needs to connect to that front column, and that's what everyone wants to do. And I don't think it's ugly or obtrusive or anything that would bother anyone. I don't believe.
Could y'all go back to one of those photographs that shows that?
Yeah, that's it. See the neighbor's column to the east there who's here in support. The old fence was 8 foot and went all the way forward to his front column of his portico. This one is slightly back from the original 8 foot, and then it dives into the center of that front column, and that it will have a column there. And it looks like someone ran out of bricks to me.
So you're just trying to obstruct the view from porch to porch, it appears, correct?
Well, I mean, is visually not attractive to us too. I mean, there's several reasons we have for wanting to do it. And of course, with both homeowners agreeing, I think that should maybe hold some sway on the decision. But it's y'all's decision, of course.
with the rules, guidelines? Because I know one of the options you had was the planter with some bushes or plants in it.
So these were the conditions that we recommend if you consider approving a visual barrier at the location that they're seeking approval for the wall. And the intent was that a trellis or a wrought iron fence with landscaping would basically give the applicant the same amount of coverage eventually once the landscaping is
More of a natural look.
done.
Is that for their guidelines?
It's not per the guidelines per se, because the guidelines does not
Specify that?
address any kind of landscaping. The trellis, it's basically a landscaping feature that is not considered as a fence, so it can be placed anywhere. But the wrought iron fence would be definitely a concession on our end, because based on the design guidelines, any kind of transparent fencing on the side yard also needs to be at least 6 foot setback from the front wall of the house.
Okay.
But my condition allows it to be in line with the front wall of the house as it is written out.
Okay.
Mr. Archer, is Mr. Cook, if this was approved and we were to go against the guidelines for the neighborhood, can you all live with the staff recommendations if approved, Mr. Cook?
Well, of course, we're going to have to live with whatever the decision is, but we are hoping that we can do what Mr. Archer wants so that we have a wall that's 6 feet tall, that is not offensive, and that provides privacy between us and our neighbor. And it will be landscaped.
Okay.
The back wall has already been landscaped on our side.
And the only thing that I would say to that is we understand, and y'all are, conservative and understand the aesthetics of that. Part of our job too, in consideration, is the guidelines and setting a precedent that possibly someone could come back a few years from now and say that, well, and they wouldn't necessarily do the good job that y'all, you know what I'm saying, that y'all would do. So that's still a consideration that we have to have.
Well, she's just saying we're here to protect the neighborhood and honor their guidelines that are in place. So we have to be, that's all we're trying to do. Could we just briefly hear from the neighbor?
Yes, please. And what we're talking about here is a 5.5 foot extension.
Yes, sir, I see. It's a pretty small, right. Now, I get your point. It's a pretty small thing.
Okay, so
Just give us a
are you
name.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, Doug Walker.
Okay. Could you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the total truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. And state your name and address, excuse me.
Doug Walker, 1498 Linden.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to hear just briefly, you are for this.
I am for it. I have a fence that ties into this, so we do need something to tie into. And I agree that when you look from our front porch and you see kind of a wall halfway through, it does look halfway done. I don't know what else to say beyond that.
Okay.
It's, again, it's all opinion, and it's sort of the way I see it walking out the front door.
Okay. Both of you have beautiful homes.
Thanks. My
Needless to
wife
say.
would appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you for coming down here.
Thanks.
You want to hear from the opposition?
Okay, and we have one in opposition. Lauren, is it Wyeth? Wolf?
Hi.
Could you state your name and address?
Yes, Lauren Wiff, 563 South McLean.
Okay. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
As far as Mr. Cook is concerned, I'll be brief as well. We agree with staff that this does go against the Central Gardens guidelines. And we did send in a letter of opposition that I'm sure that they were able to see. I think that as far as the staff recommendations, Central Gardens landmarks would agree with their recommendations.
So what would,
Central Garden landmarks would agree with the recommendations that staff made.
okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Okay. So those are all the speakers. Did the applicant have anything else that he would like to say?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion in the positive, please.
Let's see, motion to approve item number 2, COA 2024-139.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Discussion? And what we do now, if you hadn't been here, is we talk amongst ourselves and you can hear us. Then we'll come back to the real vote. Oh, everybody has to be heard. Any
The
discussion?
guidelines, this is my neighborhood, so I know these better than
Yeah,
some
you
others.
do.
The guidelines are.
Oh, are you?
I'm sorry. The guidelines are specific in that our neighborhood is set up to be a front porch neighborhood where you can visit with your neighbors from porch to porch. And it appears that this totally cuts that off. And I can envision throughout the neighborhood, if we did that, we would look like we were all in little cubicles and it would not be attractive. And it kind of defeats the purpose of the walkability and the visitability of the houses and the way they were constructed and intended to be lived in.
I am inclined to kind of agree with that, and as well as I was thinking just more from the visual from the front. I'm not against, because they originally had like a wooden fence that went there, but the way that that is received, even in the pictures, versus there being this cinder block slightly, about 4 times as thick of a wall that would happen, that would come out. My thoughts for this neighborhood is that is not an estate, a visual estate kind of situation, and they're asking for something that is more inclined for a bigger lot, the separation between the homes. It just feels unproportional, disproportional, if that's the word. I'm making up words here, oh goodness. But the fact is that having this even coming out to the point that they want, where instead of it being kind of just more in the background, which works for the backyard, it coming up to the front, having that little element, you've now established you've created a structure, a visual structure between the two, versus it being, I am not actually against there being a more transparent or even a more temporary, basically something that doesn't feel like it's imposing so much on the visual nature of that street front. So for me, I think staff is in line with, if we were to approve of this going forward. I also agree about the fact that it being cut back or having that little 5'5" coming in front looks weird. That's just an odd little kind of stopping point, even though it does fall in line with it needing to be a quarter of a space of the building, kind of coming forward from that. But I would say either it needs to, that little extension needs to go away, or it needs to be brought back in like to the wooden fence, or even better, the wrought iron fence, and the landscaping would do the same thing. It doesn't need to be this cinder block structure to achieve what it is that they're trying to do. So that is my thought. Like I'm sure they're used to the fact that there was that separation. We just don't need it to be so dominant on that street front, if that's the way that they want to go. So that's my thoughts.
I can understand the applicant's suggestion here of lining up the front setback of the house, or the front corner of the house, with this new proposed CMU wall. Like, I get this, I guess, separate from the guidelines, I get the sense that it probably doesn't look finished correctly, because it doesn't, it's not square. Like, there's definitely a point there on the edge of the house that it feels like, okay, this is the back of the house. even separate from like where it starts with the neighbor. And if you look back at the picture, there's already a visual barrier of landscaping between the two prior to this work of this fence. And I think you said there was a wooden fence there before. It's such a small section. I mean, like you said, you're talking about a 5-foot section. So I would tend to just go with, because they're not trying to extend it to the right of way, it's not like, I don't think anyone from the right of way is going to notice that, other than it looks right for the front of this more masonry section to line up with the front of the house. So I guess I'm differing somewhat, that it probably visually will look correct from the right of way for the masonry fence to start at the corner of the house. That's my only sense, but I'll go with the commission too. I mean, I get what we're trying to do here, but I also see this is a real tough one for me. It kind of rides in between.
Well, I'm also wondering is if it had been presented to us on the front end before they reevaluated it after it was done, would we have approved that, or would we have said, no, it needs to go back to where it states in the guidelines is where it is, as opposed to now that's done, we're not sure about, we need to add a little bit more because we think it might look better.
Right.
But would we have, and that was drawn in the front end, would we have approved that?
I don't know. That's a good question. Can you put that one up, Aisha? You see where that red, that's the only thing that gets me. I just look at a lot of site plans.
Yeah.
And you see where it starts in line with the front of the house. I mean, I kind of understand that from a visual component. If looking at it from the right of way and from the driveway, separate from the separation of the front porches, I don't think you'll ever notice from the right of way that you can't see between the front porches. So
How far is not the street, but the sidewalk
from that point, I don't know what whatever the front yard setback is.
It's probably a typical setback.
Do you know what the front yard setback's here, Aisha?
It's about 35 feet based on the site plan here.
Okay.
So 35 feet is to the bump out
Oh, it is.
of the house.
Yeah, set it right there.
So I believe there is about maybe 2-3 feet. So I would say 38 feet to the point where the applicant wants the wall to end right here.
Yeah.
I know.
It's a tough one for me.
Yeah, as far as masonry wall, I think that's what's kind of messy. The height, the 6-foot height with that kind of thickness, like we're used to that as it being kind of lower and then having these sort of piers that come up and you have this sort of like wrought iron and wood that happens because we have these situations throughout the neighborhood where that
I agree.
occurs.
A trellis with some landscaping would be beautiful and would be less obtrusive and would still solve the problem of the privacy that they are after.
And still you're allowing them to move it up.
It just doesn't put a big chunky wall out there, which is not standard in the neighborhood.
A chunky wall to me would have been like the typical 4-foot or even 4.5 foot that would happen, that would come, but then that wouldn't resolve their issue
That's
of
not
privacy.
resolving the visual. Okay, so. Do you have
Oh, no, I
anything?
was agreeing with you guys from earlier. I do think that is not the character of the neighborhood necessarily. I do think that a trellis would be a better option, perhaps, even more so than wrought iron. It kills 2 birds with 1 stone. You get a little bit of the privacy. You get it'll be optically pleasing, but within guidelines.
Okay.
Let's call for a vote then.
Okay, and so I want to, after hearing the discussion, so the original motion did not include as conditioned by staff, because I know you guys were wanting to discuss it, but it does sound like through the discussion is that we wanted to amend that to be as conditioned by staff, which if, Ms. Penzis, if you could put those
Go
back
back.
up, it allows the trellis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we don't want to reject the concept of them being able to move it forward to replace the idea of what they've already had.
Yeah, okay.
But we definitely aren't in, well, majority aren't in line with it being the 6-foot concrete wall being the item that comes out.
Yeah, so if we can amend the motion without objection to as conditioned by staff? Sure.
Yes.
Okay. You ready for vote?
Who did the motion?
Mr. Gill. So, got it. All right.
Do you want me to redo the motion?
No, that's
Okay.
okay.
Yes.
It's without objection, so we're.
Without objection, yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Love?
Yes.
Ms. Rainwater?
Yes.
Vice Chair Doss?
Yes.
And Chair Tucker?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you.
And we only have one other case, and Ms. Doss, I did send you a response to that on item number 6, Foster. And we could pull it up, but you had 2 questions of whether we could make sure that it was brick and that it had a porte-cochere as opposed to a garage. And so both of those are shown on the plan. So it does, it is brick, and so I think that was your concern. And it also has a porte-cochere. That's the original house. There, yeah. So here is the house. So if those were your 2 questions, if
Yes,
that
okay.
satisfies your questions, then we could vote to add that back to the consent agenda if there are no other questions. If that,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.